Hello, my name is Bill Esteb. You're probably listening to this because you are new to chiropractic and new to the office team. So first, welcome. I remember when I was first introduced to chiropractic back in 1981. Since then, I've been fascinated by the role of chiropractic assistants, and I've met some pretty terrific ones over the years. Each one saw themselves as a paraprofessional and had fully embraced the possibilities of being a healer at the front desk. These are individuals who recognized that they were responsible for creating the patient's most important first and last impression of the office. In many offices, you may be spending more time with a patient than your chiropractor will. So many patients may be inclined to confide in you or ask you questions rather than trouble the chiropractor. So in many ways, you're the chiropractor's eyes and ears, picking up and reporting subtle clues about how patients are integrating chiropractic into their lives. As part of the healing team, you play a critical role. I've been asked to provide you with a brief introduction to chiropractic and to acquaint you with the purpose of this office. My intention is fourfold. 1, to give your day-to-day responsibilities greater meaning and purpose. It's possible to reduce your contribution to that of a glorified receptionist, sort of a practice secretary whose job is constantly interrupted by a parade of patients. I'd like to show you how it can be something much more exciting and fulfilling. 2, to offer a brief overview of what chiropractic is and what it isn't. Since most patients will enter the practice where you serve with a handful of wrong-headed ideas about chiropractic, it's helpful that you're clear about the true nature of health, healing, and chiropractic. 3, to help you more quickly become a contributing member of the healthcare team in this office. There's plenty to learn about the management of the office, handling the telephone, and countless other details that I won't be covering. Instead, I want to help you appreciate your vital role on the healthcare team and remove some of the mystery about what's going on around you. And finally, 4, to give you the heads up about some of the downsides to this soul-satisfying career path. That's right. If you're not careful, you can fall prey to a debilitating condition that plagues virtually all professional caregivers: burnout. I'll show you how to stay healthy and avoid this subtle energy stealer and keep you in the game. My promise is to make this quick, to the point, and practical, regardless of the role you play in the office. So let's get started, shall we? Oh, and when you're done, I invite you to test your newly acquired understanding by taking the 20-question quiz on the Patient Media website. Chiropractic is a natural form of healthcare which has an art, science, and philosophical component. My ability to successfully communicate its key principles to you will be based almost entirely on the language I use. So that's a great place to start our journey. Simply put, words have meanings. They're symbols for ideas. Thus, if you attach different meanings to the words I use, then we won't have effective communication. This is a common problem amongst us humans. We assume words mean the same thing to everyone. They don't. On the smallest scale, it can produce arguments and miscommunications. On a larger scale, it can lead to lawsuits and even war. And while the following definitions probably won't be found in a dictionary, let me explain what I mean by each of these key terms so that you'll have a more precise idea about what I'm talking about. We'll start with the word health. Ask most people what the word health means or how they know they have health, and you'll get a couple of predictable answers. You might try it yourself. Ask your friends and family. The most common answer you'll probably hear is that health is about feeling good. Another is having plenty of energy and vitality. Others think it has something to do with being at the proper weight for their height. Each of these definitions contains an element of truth, but they miss an important distinction. Health is defined by the World Health Organization as optimum physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmities. Optimum physical, mental, and social well-being is another way of saying fully functional, or working as intended, or simply working correctly. We're healthy when our bodies work as they were designed. The other part of the definition addresses the issues of disease, infirmities, symptoms, and how someone feels. In other words, true health has little to do with how you feel or whether you have obvious symptoms or not. So let's put it all together. Health is the ability to fully function, physically, mentally, and socially, and not merely being symptom-free. So, if you've eaten some improperly prepared food and an hour or two later you find yourself vomiting, are you healthy or unhealthy? Healthy, of course. Vomiting to expel toxic food is a healthy response and a sign that the intelligence in your body is able to express itself correctly. Imagine taking medicine to prevent your body from working as it was designed. It could have tragic results. But consider the other side of the coin. Let's say you feel great, but have a pre-symptomatic cancerous growth in your colon. Are you healthy or unhealthy? You're unhealthy. You may feel great, but something is causing your body to replicate cells improperly, resulting in a tumor. Since obvious symptoms aren't present yet, you could lack health without even knowing it. As you can see, depending upon how you feel to judge your health isn't very accurate. In fact, for most people, by the time symptoms are obvious, many health problems can be well advanced, making it difficult for the body to resolve. These are examples of physical functioning. What about mental functioning? Let's say you have a fear of snakes or heights. Are you healthy or unhealthy? Or social functioning. Maybe you're invited to do some public speaking, but would do almost anything so you wouldn't have to. Are you healthy or unhealthy? Yet realize that most people don't show up in your office because they want true health, at least not in the beginning. Instead, most merely want relief from an ache or a pain. That's more correctly called sick care. It's where most patients start. In fact, the word patient comes from the Latin word meaning to suffer. It's this suffering that prompts people to seek a healthcare practitioner. And that's probably to be expected. After all, most of us have spent our entire lives treating obvious symptoms before discovering chiropractic. Cough medicine, headache medication, drugs to regulate blood pressure or cholesterol, that's all sick care. It has little to do with advancing better functioning or helping the body work as it was intended. Instead, it's about suppressing symptoms, fooling the body with drugs that artificially change the symptoms but ignore the underlying cause. It's called healthcare, but it's actually sick care. Since you'll be working in the healthcare field, it's helpful to know this important difference. In fact, the difference between what the patient wants, symptom relief, and what the patient needs, true healthcare, can often be a source of tension, even frustration, in your patient communications. So, if true health means that your body works as it was designed to work, what controls how your body works? That's an easy one. It is the purpose of the nervous system, consisting of your brain, spinal cord, and all the nerves of your body, to control and regulate every cell, tissue, organ, and system of the body. In other words, your nervous system is the master system that controls trillions of details 24/7 to keep you alive. So if your nervous system doesn't work right, you don't work right. And as we already know, if you don't work right, you're not healthy. Simple as that. When your chiropractor meets someone who has lost his or her health, the first thing your chiropractor would probably ask is, how might this patient's nervous system be compromised, preventing the body from working correctly? It's a totally different way of looking at disease and ill health. Probably one of the most common interferences to the proper working of the nervous system is the 24 moving bones that make up the spinal column. In fact, when spinal bones are involved, it's referred to as a vertebral subluxation or vertebral subluxation. Subluxation is an interesting word and one whose meaning serves as the very underpinning of the chiropractic profession. If you were to break the word into two parts, you get sub, meaning below or less than, and luxation, meaning a dislocation. Put it together with the word vertebral, meaning of the spine, and you have a term that describes a phenomenon in which bones of the spine lose their proper motion and position. Not a complete luxation or dislocation, but a subluxation. So, what's the big deal about bones being ever so slightly dislocated? Well, this ever so slight dislocation can affect the nervous system, along with adjacent muscles and soft tissues. This combination of related problems is often referred to as the vertebral subluxation complex. Your chiropractor locates areas of the spine that exhibit patterns of subluxations, slight dislocations, and uses chiropractic adjustments to help reduce their impact and help restore the patient's ability to heal. What is a chiropractic adjustment? It's the intervention intended to assist the body in restoring a more normal relationship of subluxated spinal bones. Some use the terms spinal manipulation and adjustment interchangeably, but I think the word adjustment is more specific and better accommodates the additional intention of doing what's best for the patient. While an adjustment is about releasing and fine-tuning, manipulation seems to be more about control and management. Ask your chiropractor which term he or she prefers and why. There are many ways to adjust the spine. These various methods are referred to as adjusting techniques. When someone calls on the telephone asking what technique your chiropractor uses, what they're really asking is, which way or ways does he or she adjust a patient's spine? Patients who have been to other chiropractors may express a preference for one adjusting technique over another. In fact, if you field such a request over the phone, you're almost always speaking with someone who has been to a chiropractor before. Many of those new to chiropractic are rarely aware that there are different techniques, so they won't normally have the presence of mind to even ask. Most chiropractic techniques involve some type of thrusting on spinal bones that are stuck, fixated, and not moving properly. Some techniques are applied throughout the entire spine, and others concentrate on just one or two specific areas of the spine. Some techniques involve just a light touch, or use the force of gravity to coax the spine into a healthier pattern. Others use various types of mechanical instruments to add energy to improperly positioned bones of the spine. Some adjusting approaches produce a faint popping sound when energy is put into the spinal joint. The presence or loudness of this sound is not necessarily an indication of the quality or effectiveness of the adjustment. It is thought that this sound is created by the shifting of gas and fluids in the joint. While popping and cracking may describe this sound, it is preferable not to use this language in your role as a chiropractic assistant. Not only can it encourage patients to use these vague or frightening terms with their family and friends, it suggests that chiropractic care is general and non-specific. Most chiropractors routinely learn the 5 or 6 most popular techniques in chiropractic college and can often accommodate patients who have a particular adjusting style preference. One of the things I find most fascinating about chiropractic is the many ways it can be used to help people. I'm going to refer to this as the chiropractor's intention. That is, when a chiropractor accepts a patient and delivers chiropractic care, what is the intent of the adjustment? What is the chiropractor attempting to achieve? Now, as a relative newcomer to chiropractic, this question might seem a bit strange. After all, don't most patients just show up with an ache or a pain that they're hoping a chiropractor can help them with? What more is there to it? Well, quite a bit, actually. Helping to relieve a patient's presenting ache or pain is the most basic intention a chiropractor can have, especially since if he or she doesn't, the patient is unlikely to remain under care for very long. Relief is often the only thing that a patient wants. But remember the definition of health? Providing relief limits chiropractic to providing merely what the patient can feel and turns your chiropractor into an aspirin. Now, don't get me wrong, providing a natural form of pain relief without the use of drugs or surgery is a wonderful service. Chiropractic care has helped millions in this way, and it's certainly preferable to the side effects and risks associated with taking pain medication. But chiropractic care can offer more, much more. But before we get into that, let's talk about pain. Is pain a good thing or a bad thing? Obviously, if you have pain, you probably think it's a bad thing, and you want it to go away. But not so fast. What is the purpose of pain? Why would the body be equipped to experience pain? What if the sensation of pain didn't exist? It turns out there are some important reasons why we sense pain. One reason is that it's a signal from the body that something needs attention, or it's a warning that a limit of some type has been reached and the body can no longer adapt. For example, if you bend your index finger backwards far enough, you'll start sensing some pain. That's a signal to stop bending it in a way that it's not designed to move. But let's say you ingest a drug that has the properties of relieving pain, which, when you think about it, can't really be done. All a pain-relieving drug can do is prevent your brain from sensing or registering the pain. If you repeat the simple experiment with your index finger, you're likely to be able to bend it further before the same pain threshold is reached. This is why the rampant use of pain relievers can be so dangerous. Besides the stomach bleeding and potential liver and kidney damage that they can cause, drugs fool the body, overriding its natural alarm system and ignoring its inborn wisdom designed to protect us. So, while pain is usually unpleasant, it's a good thing because it helps keep us alive. It's when we misinterpret the pain or think that simply making the pain go away without attending to its underlying cause that we get into trouble. Yet, this is how most people in our culture think about pain. And it's why many people finally show up in a chiropractic office. Many want their pain to go away and little more. Yet, beyond pain relief, one intent of chiropractic care could be the restoration of proper spinal curves, improved biomechanics, better posture, balance, and alignment. This structural and biomechanical approach to chiropractic care is based on the engineering axiom that form follows function, and function follows form. In other words, if the form of a patient's spine deviates from what we might call textbook normal, then the function of the patient's spine and the nervous system it protects will be compromised, leading to impaired health. Practices that take X-ray views of the spine and measure the ability of a patient to turn and bend often embrace this biomechanical approach in their patient care. Here, the purpose of chiropractic care is to help restore the spine and related structures to a more correct relationship with one another, with the presumption that by doing so, the patient's presenting complaint will resolve and better health will result. In this case, chiropractic care isn't about pain relief. The intent is to restore biomechanical integrity, and the body will take care of the symptoms in due course. The third intent often builds on the first two and takes function to the next level, which I'll call performance. Practitioners who see this purpose for chiropractic will often attract runners, golfers, triathletes, dancers, artists, professional athletes, and just about anyone who wants to optimize his or her physical and mental performance. Adjunctive procedures are often utilized, which can include exercises, rehab equipment, nutrition, and other services. The fourth intent is a relatively new area that is referred to as wellness. For our purposes, wellness is about being a guide or mentor to support an individual's goal to be all that they can be. This can include pregnant moms, newborns, seniors, or anyone who wants to improve their vitality and longevity with regular chiropractic care. Since ultimately, chiropractic is about the integrity of the nervous system, and we experience our lives through our nervous systems, and our nervous systems can learn, chiropractic care can serve as the perfect foundation for any number of other wellness activities. Now, a quick note. I've just covered 4 different intentions a chiropractor can have when they accept a new patient. But in real life, it's rarely that clear. Many chiropractors prefer to accommodate the health goals of each patient and, when possible, to expand each patient's vision as to what is possible. So it would not be uncommon to be in a practice in which all 4 intentions are being fulfilled on a regular basis. Every chiropractor approaches this differently, based upon his or her philosophy, the chiropractic scope of practice in your jurisdiction, training, clinical skills, and personal preferences. Ask your chiropractor about his or her intent. This way, you'll be able to better attract, support, and encourage the types of patients he or she especially enjoys serving. You might be wondering, if patients show up in a chiropractic office with structural and neurological disturbances called subluxations, what causes subluxations? In a word, stress. It is believed that a vertebral subluxation is how our body attempts to adapt to stress. Typically, when we think of stress, we think it's something to be avoided. That's distress. But there is a good kind of stress called eustress, spelled E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S. What would be a good kind of stress? A 20-minute workout at the gym would probably be considered good stress. But whether stress is good or bad depends a lot on the person being subjected to the stress. For example, that 20-minute workout at the gym would be good stress for a fit and trim 65-year-old who is in good shape and works out on a regular basis. However, the same workout for an out-of-shape, overweight 35-year-old would likely be bad stress. Whether your body considers stress good or bad is largely a function of how well it can accommodate it. Ultimately, this capacity is based on the condition of your nervous system. So it's not the stress, it's one's reaction to stress that matters. Stress is part of everyday living. In fact, a stress-free life would be boring. Life is enjoyable when we have ample resources to experience and overcome the stresses we face. There are 3 general types of stress. The workout at the gym I mentioned is a form of physical stress. A whiplash injury from a car accident is another obvious source of physical stress, as are repetitive motions, a slip and fall, lack of sleep, or overdoing it in the garden. Children experience all kinds of physical stress as well. Learning to walk or ride a bike, and even the birth process are sources of physical stress. Since most children have a tremendous ability to accommodate and adapt to stress, their aches and pains are often dismissed as growing pains, a growth spurt, or just a phase they're going through. Accumulated stress exhausts our reserves. Then, something as simple as mowing the lawn can put us over the edge. Other patients will remark that all they did was bend over to tie their shoes and their, quote, back went out. Clearly, the only way that bending over to tie your shoes would cause spinal problems is that if it was finally the straw that broke the camel's back. Another common form of stress is what we would call emotional stress. Fear, grief, anger, and other emotions can affect our entire body. Frustration, a sense of powerlessness, or feeling trapped are all common forms of emotional stress. Emotional stress is often something we create ourselves as a result of the meaning or story we attach to some event or situation. For example, starting a new job can be emotionally stressful. Learning new things, yet wanting to look good and avoid making a mistake, can contribute to stressful feelings of defensiveness, worry, or being overwhelmed. That in turn can affect our spine and nervous system. Notice the posture of someone who is sad or depressed, or watch someone clench their jaw when they're angry. Emotions are a whole body phenomenon. The third type of stress is chemical stress. Common sources of chemical stress include poor nutrition, sugar, refined carbohydrates, and unhealthy fats. Drugs, preservatives, tobacco, alcohol, vaccinations, pollen, and a host of other substances also affect our nervous systems, muscle tone, and our spine. When we experience physical, emotional, or chemical stress, our bodies attempt to accommodate and adapt to it. The strategy our body uses is based upon what kind of reserves we have. Generally speaking, those who enjoy good health, with everything working as it's supposed to, can accommodate stress better than someone who isn't eating right, isn't getting the proper rest, and is walking around with a subluxated nervous system. Their ability to adapt and accommodate even everyday stress is severely impaired. Before we get into the mechanics of how chiropractic works and how you can contribute in powerful and meaningful ways, there's one last area we should explore, which falls under the category of anatomy and physiology. That is, parts of the body and how they work. My intention isn't to turn you into a chiropractor, but merely to acquaint you with some of the terms you'll encounter, give you a quick overview of how key parts of the body work, and introduce some of the more common health complaints you're likely to encounter with patients. While I'm going to cover things in logical groupings, it is crucial to know that every part of your body affects every other part of your body. Patients who show up aren't spines, subluxations, headaches, or herniated discs. It's tempting to see them as a collection of separate parts, but it's more accurate to think of them as complex, interrelated, self-healing organisms regulated by their nervous system. Isolating parts or singling out a narrow aspect of the body overlooks the fact that we are greater than the sum of our parts. Chiropractors will often access three main systems of the body: the bone or skeletal system, the muscle system, and the nervous system. The integrity of these systems can profoundly affect the entire body. Instead of focusing on the health complaint of the person, chiropractors look at the whole person with the health complaint. Keep this holistic approach in mind as we first explore the skeletal system. There are 24 moving bones of the spinal column. From the back, these bones should line up, forming a straight line with level hips and level shoulders. Any sideways curve is called a scoliosis. When the spine curves, there is usually a compensating curve in the opposite direction elsewhere in the spine. Looking from the side, the spine should have several curves. These curves are essential for proper turning and bending and give the spine its springiness. From the side, the 7 individual bones of the neck should have a graceful forward curve. These 7 bones are known as the cervical spine, and the forward curve is called a lordosis. The way I remember that the forward curve in the neck is called a lordosis is to link it with the bowing of our head when praying to the Lord. People who have experienced trauma, say with an automobile accident, often lose the curve in their neck. This unhealthy straightening of the neck is commonly called a military neck. The uppermost bone of the neck is referred to as C1 for cervical 1. It's also called the atlas. Like the mythical character Atlas, who supported the entire world on his shoulders, C1 supports the head. The second bone in the cervical spine is, as you guessed, C2. It is often referred to as the axis. The remaining bones of the cervical spine are simply called C3, C4, C5, C6, and C7. Directly below the cervical spine, the 12 spinal bones starting at the shoulder and going down the center of the back are called the thoracic or dorsal spine. These bones are shaped a bit differently, accommodating the pairs of bones that make up the rib cage. From the side, the 12 moving bones of the thoracic spine form a curve in the opposite direction of the curve in the neck. This curve is referred to as a kyphosis or kyphotic curve. Thoracic vertebrae are simply known as T1, T2, T3, all the way down to T12. Directly below the thoracic spine are the 5 larger spinal bones of the lumbar spine. They too form a lordotic curve, echoing the forward curve of the cervical spine in the neck. They're known as L1, L2, L3, L4, and L5. Below the lumbar spine is the foundation of the spinal column called the sacrum. When viewed from the back, it's a triangular-shaped bone situated between the 2 bones of the hip. By the way, the hip bones are called ilium or iliac. So when you hear someone talk about their sacroiliac joint, they're referring to the joint formed by the sacrum and the hip. Most chiropractors simply call it the SI joint. From the side, the sacrum forms a kyphotic curve that echoes the curve above in the thoracic spine. At birth, the sacrum is a series of separate bones that fuse together into one single bone by the time we reach adulthood. And at the very bottom of the spine is the coccyx. You and I know it as the tailbone. At birth, it too consists of separate bones, usually 4, that fuse together as we mature. Now, the bones of the spinal column not only have the difficult task of allowing movement so we can turn and bend, but also of protecting the bundle of nerves of the spinal cord, the information superhighway of your body. Whenever 2 bones come together, there is a joint. These joints, or articulations, allow our hands to hold a fork, our arms to throw a ball, and our spine to permit turning and bending. At each joint is a special kind of tissue called cartilage that is enclosed in a sac-like structure filled with a lubricating fluid. In the spine, the tissue between each of the 24 vertebral bones is called a disc, or if you want to get real fancy, an intervertebral disc. The disc performs several functions. It separates adjacent bones so you don't have bone rubbing on bone. It works as a spacer so nerves can exit the spinal column from between each set of spinal bones. It allows the individual bones of the spine to flex and rotate, and each one serves as a ball bearing for the spine. Think of a disc as a miniature waterbed. The outside is a series of thick, fibrous rings that contain the softer, more fluid center. You've probably heard of the term slipped disc. Now, because of the way each disc attaches to the vertebra above and below it, a disc can't actually slip. However, it can thin, wedge, bulge, protrude, tear, or herniate. The disc is involved whenever a vertebral subluxation is present. Spinal misalignments can cause disc tissue to become wedge-shaped. This is the earliest stage of disc damage. While this position can put some pressure upon adjacent nerve tissue, pain or other obvious symptoms may not be present. Worse is a bulging disc. Like a blister, the soft center or nucleus of the disc can be compressed, pushing outward where the disc wall is thin or weak. This can produce obvious symptoms because now the bulging disc tissue may be actually pressing on or irritating nearby nerves. Patients who suffer from sciatica with pain that runs down the back of their legs will often present with a bulging disc. Or worse, the most extreme form of disc damage occurs when the disc ruptures, leaking its contents into surrounding tissues. With its cushioning and separating functions gone, movement is painful, and if chiropractic care is unsuccessful, surgical intervention may be recommended. Another type of bone problem is called arthritis, or osteoarthritis. And if that sounds like total Greek, it's because it is. Osteo is a Greek term that means bone, arthro means joint, and itis means inflammation. Put it all together and you have a bone joint inflammation. A lot of people have this problem in the spine as well as in other joints of the body. It is believed that the cause of this bone joint inflammation is the body's reaction to joints which have lost their normal motion or position. Apparently, the body adapts to uncorrected spinal stress by depositing calcium into the affected joints. As if the body is trying to mend a broken bone, it attempts to repair the malfunctioning spinal joint by joining the two segments together. We call this slow, relentless degenerative process spinal decay. As with tooth decay, which can happen at any age, early detection is important. Spinal decay is a degenerative process that worsens with time. If neglected or simply ignored, this crippling condition quietly progresses. At first, there can be a loss of proper spinal curves or a reduced ability to turn and bend. Other areas of the spine can compensate, starting a chain reaction of health problems. Over time, the body slowly deposits calcium onto the affected joint surfaces, ligaments, and connective tissues. It appears as if the body is attempting to stabilize and splint the malfunctioning spinal joint. As with high blood pressure or cancer, pain or other obvious symptoms may not be present. Unaware of the accumulating damage, many allow their problem to worsen further, eventually with complete fusion. The integrity of the spine and the individuality of affected bones are compromised. The associated neurological damage may be a contributing factor to some of the chronic health problems seen in the elderly. Years have passed since the original event that set this tragic yet preventable process in motion. Certainly the joint surfaces separated by discs are important, but each vertebra has two other joints. On the back side of each spinal bone are two other joint surfaces formed by protrusions that interlock with the bone above. These pairs of interlocking fingers form joints called facet joints. Each vertebra has a bony protrusion on the back side called the spinous process. These make those little bumps that you can see up and down your spine. Plus, there are bony protrusions on the left and right side of every vertebra called transverse processes. Powerful muscles attach to these vertebral extensions. When you think about it, the spinal column is an engineering miracle. Muscles are another system of the body that chiropractors work with, either directly or indirectly. Muscles attach to bones. When muscles contract, bones move. When a muscle contracts but doesn't relax when it's supposed to, it's called a muscle spasm. People with spinal problems often have muscles that are in spasm. It's a way the body braces and protects itself. There are a couple of ways that people deal with muscle spasms. One of the most common approaches is to get a prescription for a muscle relaxer. As with any drug that enters the bloodstream, the entire body is affected. That's why these drugs come with warnings not to drive, operate heavy machinery, or do anything that requires fine muscle movement. That's because muscle relaxers, and other drugs for that matter, can't be targeted. They affect the entire body. Same with headache medication. It affects the entire body. Muscle relaxers may calm tight muscles, but they don't address the underlying cause. This symptom-reducing approach is convenient, even popular in our culture, because it permits people to ignore their problem and to continue abusing themselves, since their body's warning system has been hijacked and artificially quieted by a drug. In fact, taking a drug to fool the body's warning system would be like a pilot of a small aircraft not believing his or her instruments. This mistrust of the body may not have you flying upside down or going north when you thought you were going south, but eventually it produces consequences that you have to deal with. It's often not until after people try the drug approach and find that drugs don't actually fix their problem, or they find they have to take increasingly larger doses to get the same relief, or they tire of the side effects, that they are prompted to pursue the more natural approach offered by chiropractic care, which creates a little problem. First, they expect instant relief. Many drugs are sold these days with the promise of fast relief. With increasingly powerful drugs, that's fairly easy to promise. This can distort many people's sense of time when they begin chiropractic care. It's not uncommon for it to take a week or two or longer of intensive chiropractic care before some patients begin to sense some progress. Being sensitive to and reporting any signs of a patient's frustration or discouragement to your chiropractor is important. Without the proper reassurance, patients who are accustomed to drug solutions may give up on chiropractic prematurely. Help patients realize that they're the ones that are doing the healing. Everyone heals at their own pace. Natural healing can be a slow process, but in the long run, it's a better approach. The second problem that patients often experience as a result of delaying chiropractic care is finding themselves a bit sore after their first couple of adjustments. They may reveal this to you, but not the chiropractor. Again, if patients don't understand why this is happening, it can discourage them from continuing their care. When patients have long-standing muscle spasms, other muscles weaken, atrophy, and waste away. When the chiropractor adjusts the spine to help correct the subluxation, it can often call into duty muscles that are, well, out of shape. This can make the flabby, out-of-shape muscles sore. It's like making a New Year's resolution to start working out at the gym. The first day you're all gung-ho and excited by the promise of a slimmer, trimmer you. It's not uncommon to wake up the next morning feeling stiff and sore. For some, this temporary discomfort is enough to break their resolve before they even really get started. If you sense patients are experiencing something similar with their chiropractic care, share this metaphor or your own experience with chiropractic and be sure to let your chiropractor know. Bones of the spine and muscles are probably what most people think about when they hear the term chiropractic. But the master system that runs the whole show is the nervous system. Ultimately, chiropractic is all about the integrity of the nervous system. Consider this. Bones are static structures. They don't move unless acted upon by muscles. And muscles don't contract to move bones unless they receive commands from the nervous system. Now, the nervous system is incredibly complex, so for people like you and me who haven't spent years and years at a chiropractic college studying neuroanatomy and physiology, here's an overly simplistic way of thinking about the nervous system. Your brain is constantly sending millions of nerve impulses down your spinal cord, out through pairs of nerve roots that emerge from between each pair of spinal bones to every cell and tissue of your body. Let's say your stomach. These controlling and regulating nerve messages between your brain and your stomach make sure your stomach does what it's supposed to do. Now, so that the brain knows that things are working as they should, the stomach sends nerve messages back to the brain. Since true health is how your body works, having clear, unimpaired, two-way communication between your brain and your body is essential. In fact, looking for interferences with brain-body communications is the primary purpose of the examination that is conducted before patients begin care. Many things can cause nerve messages to or from the brain to be compromised. One of the most common culprits is the moving bones of the spine, which you already know is called a vertebral subluxation. There appear to be two different types of nerve disturbances that a subluxation can produce. The least common is what happens when delicate nerve tissue in the vicinity of a malpositioned spinal bone is pinched, choked, or pressed upon by bones, discs, muscles, or other soft tissues involved in a subluxation. The fancy name for this is a compressive lesion. Like a water faucet that is almost shut off with just a dribble of water, a compressive lesion can produce symptoms of numbness and reduced function, like turning down the volume of your stereo or a telephone that cuts out and drops calls. The brain literally loses touch with affected organs and tissues, making them susceptible to disease, infection, and ill health. That's the compressive lesion. There is another possibility which is actually more common. When delicate nerve tissue is irritated, it can cause nerve impulses to become exaggerated. Overly excited nerves produce hyperactive organ function, like turning up the volume of your stereo full blast. Distortion and a loss of clarity result. Whether too much or too little, any disturbance to the nervous system changes the function of affected organs and tissues, which in turn produces ill health. So, if a patient comes to your office complaining of stomach problems, it may not be a stomach problem. If there are nervous system disturbances or distortions between the brain and the stomach, it may show up as a stomach problem, but it could be the result of nervous system compromise. It's like accidentally stepping on a dog's tail. The sound or symptom comes out at one end of the dog, but the real problem is at the other. In the same way that a smoke alarm sounds a warning, the problem isn't the obviously annoying signal, it's merely an indicator that something somewhere else requires your attention, namely the fire creating the smoke. But Our bodies aren't machines. Breaking the body up into parts is a convenient way of studying something as complex as the human body, but there's something much more important going on. Chiropractors acknowledge that there is an intelligence in the body. This intelligence knows the exact amount of stomach acid that needs to be used. It knows to speed up your heart and increase your blood pressure when we climb a flight of stairs, and by the way, to lower it when we reach our desired floor. It knows how to heal a cut and mend a broken bone, and it knows to mobilize the immune system when it recognizes an invasion of harmful germs. This special intelligence is always on the job and is always looking after us, taking care of millions of details necessary to keep us alive. This special intelligence helps us adapt to our environment. If it's too hot, the intelligence of our body increases the amount of moisture we perspire. Too cold, and the same intelligence of the body withdraws blood from our hands and feet to maintain the temperature of our brain and other vital organs. This constant seeking of equilibrium and balance is called homeostasis. Chiropractors have a profound respect for this wisdom of the body. Rather than rushing in to make a symptom go away, chiropractors are generally more intrigued by what might be the source of its underlying, sometimes hidden cause. This is at odds with the drug-focused culture that surrounds us. It is so pervasive that most people go for the medicine cabinet at the slightest hint of an ache or a pain. Realize that with only a few exceptions, there are only two things a drug can do: either speed up a bodily function or slow down a bodily function. Examples of drugs that have the effect of speeding up bodily functions are things like caffeine, nicotine, laxatives, fertility drugs, and weight loss treatments. Drugs that produce the effect of slowing things down would be things like pain relievers, muscle relaxers, stomach antacids, and antihistamines. These artificial manipulations of bodily functions lack the intelligence that your body has. Unlike the body, that can raise your body temperature to produce a fever to fight an infection, and then lower it when appropriate, a drug has no such intelligence. Realize that it is generally outside a chiropractor's scope of practice to make recommendations about drugs, either for or against. However, that does not preclude you from asking patients questions about their drug use. Some of my favorites include: how does a drug find a headache? What's the difference between a good drug and a bad drug? What's the difference between an effect and a side effect? And why do some drugs require a prescription and others do not? When asked with the right tone of voice and maybe even a mischievous twinkle in your eye, you can get patients thinking. While it varies from practice to practice, there are 5 different types of chiropractic care. Your chiropractor may use slightly different terms, but the idea is pretty much the same. The first stage of care, in fact this is where most patients begin, is called relief care or initial intensive care. Seeking relief from an ache or a pain or other symptom is often what prompts many patients to begin chiropractic care. Because symptom treating is how they've viewed healthcare their entire lives, the idea of continuing chiropractic care beyond the relief of symptoms is a new idea for most patients. It may be a new idea to you as well. With the obvious symptoms reduced, patients then have the option of continuing with corrective, rehabilitative, or reconstructive care. This helps stabilize and strengthen their spine. In the same way obvious symptoms are the last thing to appear after underlying problems often fester for years, symptoms will be the first thing to clear up, and they do so long before muscles, ligaments, and soft tissues that support the spine are fully healed and retrained. This predisposes patients to a relapse. In fact, it's not uncommon for patients to start care, stop care, start care, stop care. It may take several of these stop-and-go cycles before they see the value in some type of ongoing corrective care. So, if patients discontinue their care as soon as they feel better, they're likely to find that their original problem will return. The next type of care is often called maintenance care. In the same way you maintain your teeth and gums with regular brushing and flossing, periodic chiropractic checkups are designed to help preserve the progress and investment the patient has made during the earlier stages of care. The frequency of visits is based upon the patient's age, condition, and the stresses in their life and varies from patient to patient. Beyond preservation is the realm of prevention. Like maintenance care, patients who choose preventive care usually don't have any obvious health problems. Instead, periodic chiropractic checkups are designed to help catch new problems early. This can minimize the severity of flare-ups. Those who truly value their health often take this proactive approach. More recently, wellness care is growing in popularity. Practice members who want to be all that they can be, improve their performance, and reach the highest levels of health, vitality, and longevity avail themselves of wellness care. Chiropractic care, along with other healthy habits, creates new possibilities for enlightenment and transformation. Every chiropractor has a different take on the types of care they offer, so find out what your chiropractor prefers when presenting the different care options offered in your office. Without applying chiropractic principles to actual people, chiropractic is merely an interesting philosophy. So let's walk through the practical application of this information in a typical chiropractic office. The following scenario varies from practice to practice, so be sure to consult with your chiropractor to see how he or she prefers things to be done. If you work at the front desk, you are the gatekeeper of the practice. You will be an important part of the first and last impression that patients or practice members form of the office. In some offices, you'll spend more time with patients than the chiropractor does. You'll be responsible for monitoring and maintaining a healthy office environment, and perhaps more importantly, you'll be the go-to person when patients have concerns, questions, or upsets. Don't worry, this sounds far more difficult than it really is. An understanding of chiropractic, which you now have, a little common sense, and a love for people, and you'll do great. Probably the best place to begin is with a new patient. There are still a lot of myths and misconceptions floating around out there about chiropractic and chiropractors. These, combined with personality distortions that often result from painful symptoms, and you have a person who may be distracted by emotional baggage, not able to concentrate and listen effectively. Recognizing this, here are a couple of suggestions. Number 1. Slow down. After answering the telephone all day or feeling the pressure of a full reception room, it's tempting to speak quickly. Slow down. Put a smile on your face, which people can hear in your voice, and enunciate your words carefully. 2. Avoid assumptions. Remember, for many people, consulting a chiropractor is all new. It's your responsibility to prepare patients for a successful new patient experience, whether it's making sure the new patient knows where your office is located, to reminding them what to bring with them, or alerting them as to how long their first visit is likely to take. 3. Anticipate their needs. This is one of the cornerstones of being a healer at the front desk. By recognizing the emotional issues that patients may be facing, whether fear or the unknown, worry, frustration, or some other emotion, your ability to anticipate and neutralize their often unspoken emotional needs can build rapport and deepen your influence. Look for authentic ways to offer hope, communicate confidence in the chiropractor, and put a prospective patient at ease. After you've seen patient after patient get results with chiropractic care for some time, it'll be tempting to diagnose callers over the telephone and to promise results. Careful, you're not the chiropractor. And practicing chiropractic without the proper education and license is not advisable. Spoken or unspoken, part of your responsibility is to monitor and maintain the physical environment of the office. That means keeping the front desk area neat and tidy. It means keeping an eye on the condition of your brochure rack and reception room magazines, picking up the toys, and even making sure plants in your office look healthy and are properly looked after. Patients, especially new patients, drink in every little detail and form an opinion about you, the chiropractor, and your practice. Crooked wall posters, dog-eared magazines, admitting paperwork that looks like bad copies of a bad copy can work against the intent and purpose of the practice, sabotage patient compliance, and referrals, the lifeblood of every practice. After a new patient completes the admitting paperwork, some offices show new patients a brief orientation video. This is designed to familiarize patients with first visit procedures and reduce some of the mental chatter that often afflicts new patients. Then, the patient meets with a chiropractor to discuss his or her problem. This brief meeting is usually referred to as the consultation. It gives both the patient and the chiropractor an opportunity to review the patient's health history, ask and answer questions, and determine whether the patient is a good candidate for chiropractic care. If so, the next step is usually a thorough examination. Your chiropractor will use a variety of tests, tools, and diagnostic approaches to determine the presence and location of any vertebral subluxations that could be the underlying cause of the patient's health problems. With an understanding of the patient's condition, some offices choose to deliver the patient's first chiropractic adjustment, while other practices do not. Instead, they'll dismiss the patient, having them return later the same day or often the next, to receive a formal report of findings and recommendations for care, followed by the first chiropractic adjustment. It varies from practice to practice, patient to patient. You might ask your chiropractor how and why he or she has determined the procedure used in your office, so you can understand and support your chiropractor's preferred office protocol. Since the days of Socrates and the ancient Greeks, asking questions has always been an effective way to uncover the truth. When patients ask questions, they often reveal their fears, concerns, and interests. Effectively fielding patient questions can be a most challenging yet rewarding part of being a chiropractic assistant. But questions are not always what they seem. The sensitive chiropractic assistant recognizes that a patient's question about X-ray radiation may actually disguise a concern about the cost of the X-rays. A question about your financial policy may be prompted by a patient's friend wondering if their government benefits cover chiropractic care. It's important to be confident in your knowledge of chiropractic care so you can see beyond the obvious when patients ask questions. Interestingly, patients often ask the staff the same questions they've just asked the chiropractor. This isn't so much a test as it is a way of seeking a second opinion. The patient kind of expects the company line from the chiropractor, but what does a real person think? Still other times, patients will ask you the question instead of the chiropractor because they perceive him or her as being too busy. Naturally, your answer won't have to be an exact echo of the chiropractor's. After all, how could it? However, it is critical that you have an answer that reflects the philosophy of the practice. If you don't know how your chiropractor would like you to answer the patient, be sure to write it down and promise to have an answer on their next visit. Don't fake it. It's okay to say, "I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you." The types of questions patients ask change when they are disappointed, preparing to drop out of care, refer a friend, or take other steps that may affect their compliance with the chiropractor's recommendations. Notifying him or her when patients ask leading questions can provide valuable feedback that could prompt changes in the clinical approach or a conversation to clear up misunderstandings. Remember, you are a vital link between the patient and the chiropractor. In this way, you are a crucial participant in the healing process. Most chiropractors recommend an aggressive patient visit schedule during the early stages of care. This can range from 3 visits a week to visits a couple of times each day. There are a couple of reasons for this. Many patients present with problems that have been quietly festering for years before obvious symptoms show up. Years of muscle spasms, scar tissue, and soft tissue damage make it virtually impossible to correct the problem with a single chiropractic adjustment. Instead, the chiropractor attempts to retrain the supporting muscles and ligaments of the spine with each visit building on the ones before. Frequent visits at the beginning of care help create a momentum for healing. Like a rocket that has to gain enough speed to lift off and get into orbit, or it will fall back to the ground, chiropractic visits need to be frequent enough to reach escape velocity. But the reverse is possible too. The energy delivered by the adjustment can be wasted and make little difference if the visits are spaced too far apart. The key is to find the sweet spot where the greatest benefit is produced by the fewest number of visits. It's a real art, and your chiropractor has become an expert at making recommendations that produce the greatest results in the shortest amount of time. You will be invaluable at helping patients understand the importance of keeping their visits. Like an airplane that uses massive amounts of energy to take off and become airborne, frequent visits at the beginning of care will be necessary. But later, maintaining a comfortable cruising altitude requires very little energy. Same with chiropractic care. Naturally, since patients have spent their entire lives consulting doctors to eliminate their symptoms, discontinuing the prescription once they feel better, Most patients will approach chiropractic care in the same way, wanting to drop out once they feel better. And while your chiropractor will explain the benefits of a schedule of ongoing chiropractic visits to patients, and in the beginning, patients may even agree or embrace such a schedule, things change. When their symptoms disappear, health can become less of a priority. Or maybe they encounter some unexpected car repairs, or it's tax time, or knowing that they should continue coming in, but because they have a change of heart, some patients will make an appointment and then break it. Reschedule and then break it. Reschedule again, but not show up. They're hoping someone will get the hint that they've opted to end their chiropractic care at this time. My experience has been that it's best to honor the patient's free will and set the stage so patients will feel comfortable to reactivate themselves and return should they have an inevitable relapse sometime in the future. Be sure to ask your chiropractor the best way to handle a patient's disengagement from the practice. Some prefer to call the patient and discuss the issue. Some like to send a dismissal letter thanking them for the opportunity to be of service and inviting them back should their problem return in the future. A steady stream of new patients is important for any practice, and the very best kind of new patient is a new patient that is referred. Referrals tend to be more qualified, cooperative, and willing to participate and follow recommendations. Helping to facilitate new patient referral opportunities is one of the most powerful ways to assure the success of the practice. If you're like me, it's hard to promote ourselves. It can sound self-serving, even egotistical. That's why many chiropractors won't promote themselves when the situation arises. But that's where you come in. You're in the unique position to not only experience referral opportunities, but to initiate them by building up, anointing, and generally raving about your chiropractor without sounding self-centered. Here are a couple of common situations that lend themselves to promoting referrals. Helping to grow the practice will not only produce a great deal of personal satisfaction, it's the surest path to job security. Situation number 1. A patient is at the front desk, either before or after their care, and is just gushing about how much better they feel or explaining that the chiropractor has helped them so much. This is the perfect opportunity for you to mention that the office is still in the growth stage and that if they know someone who they think the chiropractor can help, please send them your way. Situation number 2. A patient mentions that they have a friend who could probably be helped with chiropractic care, but I can't seem to get them to come in. We see that all the time, you observe. Could I give you some information that you could give to your friend, or how about if I have my chiropractor give them a call? Look for ways to help your current patient enjoy what it feels like to help someone they care about. Situation number 3. Most headache patients refer other headache patients, and low back patients tend to refer fellow low back pain sufferers. So alert patients to other types of health problems that can resolve with chiropractic care. Oh, I'm so delighted the chiropractor is able to help you with your sciatica, and she gets great results with headaches too. Do you know someone who complains about headaches? Maybe we could help them as well. Your brochure rack can be an important ally in your referral overtures. Get in the habit of giving patients brochures, and be sure to write the name of the person the brochure needs to get to on the cover of the brochure. There are countless referral opportunities outside your office too. For example, you see someone standing in line in the grocery store and they're grabbing and rubbing their neck. Is your neck sore, you ask? You should see my chiropractor, and then hand them a business card. It's easy. I could go on and on. But the main idea here is to be constantly on the lookout for people who might be helped. Your job isn't to drag them into the office against their will. Instead, be an optimistic chiropractic advocate, explaining the chiropractic approach to better health. After all, how else are they going to learn about chiropractic? Probably one of the most powerful ways to become an advocate for chiropractic is to be a walking example of good health yourself. Naturally, that means getting adjusted regularly, eating the right foods, getting the proper rest, maintaining a positive attitude, and making sure you possess all the other ingredients essential for good health. By being a good example, your words will have more power, your suggestions are more likely to be followed, and your influence will be more profound. And that means more fun and a greater sense of satisfaction from making a difference in the lives of patients. In closing, let me offer a few suggestions that I've either learned firsthand as a patient or from the thousands of chiropractic assistants I've met over the years. Keep private information private. It used to be that gossiping or revealing someone else's health details was just a sign of poor judgment. Today, these types of infractions have legal implications. Read your office's privacy policy and follow it to the letter. Manage your time. Plan your day and make sure you're attending to the most important tasks first. When confronted with the decision to act on an unpleasant task or a delightful task, I found it works best to address the unpleasant task first. Get it out of the way. Procrastination simply makes it worse. Manage your attention. Working in a chiropractic office means that you're in the people business. And while it may be tempting to make that one last computer entry, the patient in front of you is more important than the patient on the computer screen. Patients aren't interruptions or inconveniences. They are the entire reason that the office even exists. Keep learning. There is so much to learn in chiropractic. It's so easy to fall into the trap of learning just the basics needed to get by. But that leads to a boring routine. Read chiropractic books and publications. Attend seminars. Listen to tapes. Discover its colorful past and amazing future. Look for new responsibilities to assume. Who knows? Maybe someday you'll become a chiropractor yourself. But a word of caution. Your greatest enemy will be burnout. It's a lethargic, unhealthy, emotional distancing that produces apathy and resignation. Burnout is one of the biggest occupational hazards associated with being a professional caregiver. The key is to care, but not to care too much. Ultimately, burnout comes as a result of unclear boundaries. When you care about the patient's health much more than the patient cares about your health, you've crossed a boundary. When you blame yourself for the poor choices and unhealthy priorities that patients make, you've crossed a boundary. When you allow judgment to crowd out curiosity, you've crossed a boundary. If you find yourself a little crispy around the edges, it's a sign that you've made the relationship about you rather than the patient. Extricating yourself will mean establishing and honoring more appropriate boundaries between your personal and professional life, and more than likely, improving or restoring your own health. Burnout will take you out if you let it. So don't allow it to go unattended. It rarely resolves on its own and tends to worsen with time. There has never been a better time to be in the chiropractic profession. As more and more people become suspicious or at least disenchanted with the pill for every ill mindset of our culture, there is a new interest in less risky solutions. Chiropractic is safe and natural. As the aging baby boomers start taxing the healthcare system, there will be an increased interest for things natural. These were the folks who shunned polyester and coined the phrase, "get real." Since chiropractic doesn't put anything in or take anything out, and the only side effects are positive effects, chiropractic is well positioned to become even more popular. Chiropractic is truthful. The nervous system is the master system that controls and regulates everything else. As this simple truth becomes more widely known and understood, chiropractic will enjoy a new renaissance. Truth always wins over deception. Maybe not at first, but eventually the truth comes out on top. Chiropractic is so very close to enjoying the recognition and cultural authority it deserves, and you're part of that. So congratulations. It is an honor to serve beside you.